Welcome to Leading by Example, Upholding Standards Without Compromise. I am your host, Dr. Vaughn, inspiring excellence, one lesson at a time. Are you ready to be better within your world and become the standard bearer within your organization or wherever you are? Leaders, aspirants, every one of you, all of us influence our culture, the organization's culture, our workplace's culture through actions taken both inside and outside of the workplace. I founded Ontero Solutions upon integrity, customer satisfaction, and attention to detail, specifically executive coaching and leadership development. Join in for fun, practical, and educational stories as I share lessons, both the good and the bad, that I have learned in my 20 years of leadership and management experience. Leading by example starts now. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand spanking new radio show that is set to challenge the status quo, inspire change, and empower you to lead by example in a world where standards are often compromised. I'm your host, Dr. Vaughn, and I'm thrilled to be on this journey of discovery and transformation with you. Have you ever wondered why standards seem to erode in our society? Whether it's in the realm of ethics, business, politics, or even our personal lives? Why do we often find ourselves in situations where principles and values are sacrificed for short-term gains or convenience? These questions lie at the heart of our show, Leading by Example, Upholding Standards Without Compromise. Over the course of the show, we will delve deep into the complex landscape of compromised standards, seeking answers, insights, and most importantly, solutions. So are you ready to learn more about leading by example? If so, let's begin. So today we resume our discussion around the role of ethics and integrity in building a lasting leadership legacy with the final episode of the Legacy of Honor series, Mentorship and its Impact on Leadership Development. In the first episode, titled Foundations of Honorable Leadership, we examined the essential qualities that define honorable leadership and how those qualities can be cultivated. In the second episode, we examined the role of leaders in fostering an ethical culture within their organizations and the impact this has on overall performance and reputation. And in this final episode, we will explore how mentorship programs can shape the next generation of leaders by instilling honor and responsibility. I am so super duper excited because today we have a special guest, U.S. Army Colonel Trina Rice. Trina is one of my closest friends. We met at the Command and General Staff College over 10 years ago and have stayed connected since. I promise this episode will be energetic and full of good chatter as Trina shares her diverse mentorship and leadership development experiences. So without further haste, let me introduce my sister friend. Colonel Trina Rice, a native of New York City, is a distinguished military officer currently serving as the Military Deputy G1 at Army Materiel Command in Huntsville, Alabama. She oversees HR support for over 165,000 personnel globally. Commissioned as a second lieutenant through Virginia Tech's Corps of Cadets, Colonel Rice began her career in the Air Defense Artillery in 1997 before transitioning to the Adjutant General's Corps. Her 23-year career spans numerous key positions, including tactical control, human resources, and senior leadership roles in Korea, Fort Bliss, Hawaii, Atlanta, the Pentagon, and Iraq. Colonel Rice has been instrumental in significant policy developments, notably the inclusion of women in all combat roles. Her extensive leadership experience includes roles at U.S. NORTHCOM NORAD, 1st Infantry Division, U.S. Army Forces Europe, Africa, and as Senior Military Assistant to the Undersecretary of Defense. She holds master's degrees in Human Resources Management and National Security Strategy and has earned numerous commendations, including the Defense Superior Service Medal and Bronze Star. Her exemplary service and commitment to advancing military HR policies and practices make her a highly respected leader in the United States Army. Okay? So what Colonel Rice brings to today's discussion, she brings an unparalleled wealth of experience and expertise to this episode. Notably, Colonel Rice was instrumental in developing policies that opened combat roles to women, paving the way for their participation in Ranger School and other previously restricted assignments. Her leadership has been critical in various deployments, including Operation Southern Watch in Saudi Arabia and Operation Iraqi Freedom in Iraq. With advanced degrees in human resources management and national security strategy and a commitment to diversity and inclusion, Colonel Rice's contributions have been recognized with numerous awards, including the Defense Superior Service Medal and the Bronze Star. Her current focus on innovative HR solutions and mentorship ensures that she continues to shape the future of military leadership. So join us as Colonel Rice shares her insights on effective mentorship, leadership development, and the importance of inclusive policies and fostering a dynamic and resilient military force. So without further delay, let's get started. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, 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 friend.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, that was amazing. It's like, are you talking about me?
I'm talking about you. Yes, yes. I'm so proud of you. So proud of you. So proud to know you, to know of your accomplishments, but more importantly, to call you my friend.
Same. And I'm honored just as much to have had the opportunity for the past 10 plus years.
Right. It's been that long, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I mean, this little event that we did together.
Right.
And it's so funny as we, this episode, we'll talk about leadership and mentorship. That was one of the things that I did while I was there at the Commanding General and Staff College, which is where we met, as you noted. We were part of a committee.
Mm-hmm.
You recall, okay, this little committee, right? That, that's what it was about. It was an opportunity to network. You were in a place where you didn't really know anybody.
Sure didn't.
And, it was an opportunity to just display so many different things. And one of the things that one did not expect to have was to meet someone like yourself, to become a friend for as long as we have been. So, it is amazing how these little interactions that sometimes people want to skip or ignore or avoid, can turn into something like this. So I really am grateful for all of our time, thus far, and where we go in the future. So
yes, and it was meant to be. I was like, I love her attention to detail because everything we had to do, you did it with excellence. Even though it wasn't coursework or what we were there for at that time, even though it was an activity that we weren't getting graded for, I mean, you were all in. And I remember, I don't know if you knew it, but people around us, were like, they nicknamed you Condoleezza Rice.
I had no idea.
Yeah, they're like, here come Condoleezza. You didn't know that?
I had no idea. Oh my.
Yes. But you know what? That's a compliment. Wow. That's a tremendous compliment, right?
It is. It really is. I mean, because many people, they will tell you, I mean, she did not do anything halfway. Everything was 100%, no matter how small, how insignificant or as significant. She gave it her all. And that is what I try and do,
Yep. That was your nickname, Condoleezza. I can't believe I never told you that.
I had no idea. Oh my God.
Yes, ma'am. So sis, we're gonna start off talking about the benefits of mentorship. I mean, your career has been like, oh my gosh, just so, I mean, we're gonna talk about it. I want you to talk about it as we go along, but I'm just so super duper impressed, especially, you being a woman of color. Okay. So that's why when this topic, I was like, I gotta ask my sis if she can talk about it because it's phenomenal, what you've been able to accomplish in your career timeline, in the face of, the challenges that women of color experience, not just in the military, but everywhere. So please start us off by sharing how you approach mentorship and leadership development as a mentor and as a mentee.
Oh, wow. So I really appreciate that question. It's a pretty big thing. When I started my career, I actually was a cadet, as you noted earlier, graduating from Virginia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's one of the few programs in the nation where the cadets, we all live together. We are that I may serve, right? Ut prosum. So that's the school's motto. Okay. And, so from the very beginning, serving, is something that
I
I was
love it.
introduced to, and became a value, something that I incorporated that became a part of me. And as such, giving back through mentorship has been one of those ways that I've been able to live, that motto of ours all of these years. And it's amazing because people will find that individuals who will become mentors are not people you would have expected to be that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find that, okay, now I got to give back. And you may find that there are individuals that you may not have thought that you could be a mentor to. You're mentoring them. So for me, I will tell you, most of my mentors have not looked like me, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've been men, they've been
Mm-hmm.
largely Caucasian. And
Mm-hmm.
it just floored me because it's not what you expect.
Right.
When you're generally the only one in the room, you're always the minority or the female and or the minority female, and you're constantly surrounded by, generally older white men. You're not expecting them to become a mentor. You kind of see
Right.
them mentor each other. You see a lot of the camaraderie amongst them. You are not necessarily the enemy, but they generally don't know you. And so, how we tend to deal with things that we're unfamiliar with, we kind of shy away from it. We, kind of, hey, it's like they tell you about the animals, hey, don't mess with them and they won't mess with you.
Right. Let them be. Yeah.
Yes, just let them be and move on their way. And so, but I will tell you, the first true mentor that I had coming in the military was a white male. And, at first he treated me almost like, I was a member of his family. And it was, very, suspicious. It's kind of how I felt, because I never really encountered anything like that. And so you're
Right.
thinking, okay, what's wrong with
What's
this
really
guy?
going on? Am I being
Yeah,
groomed?
yes, what is happening here? So,
Right.
I mean, but he was amazing. I mean, he would, invite me to events. And I mean, and he would invite others, so it wasn't as if it was just a me and him kind of thing. He would invite others of my peers, which, hadn't been something I'd seen in my earlier years. It was very exclusive,
Mm-hmm.
very male dominated, the events, people just assumed that you would not want to go or, assumed that, you're just not a part of this. And so, you know, meeting him and having these invitations, at his home, he would have social events at his house. And, there'd be 4 or 5 or, of us that he would invite. And I mean, he made time for all of us individually and as a group.
What a
And
great guy.
yes. And, for some people, they saw that as, oh, kissing up to the boss, or you're kissing up to the boss. And I'm thinking, I'm the last somebody to be kissing up to anybody because, you just never really had that. And so I really embraced that because he embraced me. And it was very sad when, as you know, in the military, we don't stay in places for very long. And
Mm-hmm.
either, you wait long enough and either you're going to move or they're going to move. And so, that's what happened. And, it just felt like I had lost something because this was an individual who gave me advice about things. He would make me observant to things that, you never really paid attention to because, you're young. So, you see things happening for the first time. You just think, oh, that's normal. That's natural. It is what it is. But he started adding context to things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just very eye-opening because it made me more conscious, more situationally aware of things that were happening. And it wasn't to say that they were bad things that were happening, but they were things that were happening underneath the surface that had additional meaning, you know? And so, like I said, so here this guy is giving me all these kind of hints and tips, and I'm thinking, okay, not sure what I've done, to have earned, this kind of attention. And, again, it was very good, just about your uniform and your appearance, how, when you're briefing, speak like this and, watch what your hands are doing because they can become distractions and et cetera, et cetera. And so, he would give me compliments on, when I, remembered those things. And as I would improve with things, he would sit me down and he would give me feedback on, where I've improved and then things I can do to continue to improve. And again, it was just such a confidence building relationship because to that point, I had a lot of self-doubt. Again, you spoke about it earlier on in the show that as Black women, coming up in leadership positions, oftentimes people look at you like you don't belong, that you're only here. I mean, people literally told me I was only there to fill a quota. I'm sorry, really? Because I'm pretty sure I did all the same things you had to do to get here,
Right.
And so, coming of age in the 90s where affirmative action was a very big deal.
Absolutely.
And, going to college, I get there and, I had a significant number of individuals, largely white males, because I did go to an engineering school, mathematics and those kinds of careers were sought there. I mean, I myself had been a business major, but, I would have individuals walk up to me and tell me that, if it weren't for you and affirmative action, my friend would be here. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm sorry. Do I know you? I mean, did we meet somewhere and I have forgotten that you would know all the things that I have done to get me here? And so, I was, I had done very well academically. I was in one of the top high schools, in New York City. And I wasn't in college on an athletic scholarship,
Right.
despite the fact that, I was an athlete. I ran track, I ran cross country, I mean, the 400, the 800, the 1,000, but that's not why I was there. I was there because I was academically gifted, if you will, and so, but for this individual, it was just like, yeah, again, one of you guys, and if not for you, my friend would be here. I was interning at JP Morgan,
Oh, wow.
do you think I was ever asked, any such a thing? No, so it's like, so starting from a place like that, where you have individuals who treat you that way, and then to come upon someone who's willing, who looked like those kinds of individuals, but was willing to treat you fairly and equitably and, inclusive is a huge thing. And so as a mentee, I sucked it up because I didn't know, how long this was going to last or if I would ever meet someone like that again. And so I made it a point that when I had the opportunity to share that, to return that, to pay it forward, I did that, and I continue to do that today.
That's amazing. And listening to you talk about, your beginnings at Virginia Tech. And, then later on when you met this, your mentor and you were suspicious. Now I understand why you were suspicious of him because of your prior experiences. And I was just wondering, like, I love HBCU. I came from one. And I was just wondering, because I know like my path was a lot more different because I was, prior enlisted and I didn't transition to become an officer until I was, much older in my, as an adult. But I was just wondering, something about, the way we grew up in schools that provide you that exposure and, that grooming to where you're more receptive to, that type of mentorship. You know what I mean? So like in the HBCU, you're around people that look like you. But when you are in the environment that you spoke of with your first mentor, you're not. In the military, you're not. And I just wonder sometimes if, our younger officers aren't, granted a disservice because they don't have anybody to mentor them right off the bat. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that may be one of your passions we talked about before, right? Talked about mentoring
Oh,
junior officers. Yes.
yes, yes. Again, is the further I've gone into my career, the more purposeful I have been about that, and more purposeful in doing so for our younger officers. You see a lot of that at the midpoint of your career, because more senior officers, they begin to see reflections of themselves,
Hmm.
right, in these middle grade, mid-career officers, because now they're thinking, okay, you've done 10 years, 11, 12 years, this is a career, and I'm trying to set the path for the next generation, if you will. And so I never saw that. I never saw that as, wow, that's a good reason to mentor individuals, right? We talk about creating the world that we want, or creating the
Hmm.
environment, that we want. That if you don't have it, sometimes you have to go out and get it. You have to go out
Hmm.
and make those opportunities for yourself. And so that's what I've done. I watch that amongst my peers, and those whom I've worked for, my senior leaders. And again, largely white males, they find, the peers, in my group where, oh, let's go golfing. And, they invite the family over for dinner, or, these things that are often done outside of duty hours
Hmm.
and away from the office. And I had to encourage my mentees to recognize that, sometimes you have to do those things. They may not feel comfortable, but in many an organization, especially if you're trying to get to the top, you're going to have to be uncomfortable. Okay.
Yes.
And you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I find that when they're no longer uncomfortable, they begin to do things that, are not in their best interest. And so, I try to stay on my mentees and keep them focused. So I talked earlier about situational awareness. You would be amazed. People talk about not having self-awareness. Situational awareness is just as bad. And so it's one of those things that I really try to get my mentees thinking on. And I myself, I'm always, kind of paying attention. Um, having done 2 tours to Iraq, being focused, you get hyper focused on
Head
your
on a
certain
swivel.
things. Yes,
On a swivel.
yes, head
Hmm.
on a swivel, exactly. And then we come back, we kind of feel this sense of safety. We kind of let that go. And we're looking more, outside for those kinds of threats, if you will, those dangers. And we fail to think about sometimes those dangers are right next to us.
Yeah, they
Because
moved closer. Yeah.
yes, yes, because not everyone wants to see you as successful as you want to be.
Ooh, say it.
And, I encountered a lot of that. And, even to this day, you would think, wow, 20, plus years, and counting, that, you have now found people, or you're part of, larger organizations or more senior organizations where these kinds of things are, an anomaly. And sadly, they are not. You know, even at these levels, you still find individuals who, instead of wanting to work with you, they still wanting to compete with you. And you're thinking, okay, there really is enough room at the top for all of us to do what we want to do. You just got to know what that is. And, and that was one of those things that I can say from early on in my career that I made a point of. I would get to organizations, as I mentioned earlier, and I know you've experienced it yourself, where you walk in a room and it's you, yourself, and you. Okay.
You made an excellent point about getting comfortable being uncomfortable because like you, the mentors I had in the military were white males. They were the
Mhm.
ones that quickly embraced me and, put me on the path that I wanted to go on. It was easier for me to share for whatever reason, they were willing to listen, and it was easier for me to share with them what my career aspirations were. And,
Sure.
sometimes that can be a double-edged sword, because sometimes that relationship could, lead into, something fractious. You know
Sure.
what I mean?
Yes.
But
Yes.
being comfortable, being uncomfortable was huge. I remember one of the first instances, and when you said that, I thought about it. Reminded me. I don't know if you remember. I think you were stationed in Colorado, or you were doing some kind of professional development outing. But it was you. You were the only Black girl sitting in the middle of all these white guys on the horses. And I was like, what the hell is she doing? And this was way before Cowboy Carter.
Yes.
But you were doing it. You were doing it.
Yes. Yes. I will tell you, and it's funny because you mentioned Colorado, because that's yeah. So whitewater rafting, right?
Right. You couldn't worry about your hair.
Yes. It's like, okay, do you people understand the sacrifice I am making to do such things? Oh my goodness. But at the same time, it was for them to recognize, hey, this girl is a non-swimmer, and it's like, yeah, make sure my life jacket is on tight, that it is closed. But my willingness, again, about being uncomfortable in situations where, it's not just about making them comfortable, but having them to recognize you have so much to contribute in
Yeah.
so many other areas, that, all of these prejudgments that they've made about you are wrong.
Yeah.
And so Colorado was definitely an opportunity for me to do a lot of that. Biking. Oh my goodness. We did this 30-mile bike. Really?
I remember you were doing all that crazy stuff.
Yes.
I remember. And, I
Hiking,
still had to do some of those things when I was, in company command. I was doing, I learned how to do some country line dances,
Oh,
I smoked some cigar and, all those things, just to be in, just to have access to the information and to be a part of the group. And it was great. It was great after I got over being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. So and I will tell you though, one of the things, because again, it's about being mindful, because again, having that uncomfortability there forces you to keep awareness of your situations. And, sometimes people kind of let that fall, right? Let their hair down when they get into situations where they feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not always a good thing. And, one of the examples I'll give is, or here's an example that I will give is, my first mentor, who happened to be a person of color, was when I worked at the Pentagon. My first tour, because I've done 3 now.
Right.
So, but my first tour there, which by the way was after our time at CGSC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's when you were living in Crystal City, right?
Yes. So that was my first tour at the Pentagon, and that was my first opportunity to have a person of color as a mentor. And so I am, we're at what, 10, 12 years almost into our careers. And so that's how long it was before, I had my first one.
Wow.
And one of the things, before he became a mentor, was I noticed how other Black officers, especially, operated around him. So he was a general officer, and, and I saw how they responded in his presence, vice, how they responded in white general officers' presence. And I'm thinking, wow, seriously? If he was somebody different, would you feel that comfortable, talking to him like that, or responding in that way, or, acting that way? And so I'm also one of these people where when I get an opportunity, I'll talk about something, I don't like it. Hey, I'm gonna find a way to get involved and fix it or do it better, or, what have you. And so unbeknownst to me, the opportunity was going to arise for me to demonstrate. Now that I'm working in the presence of someone like that, will I too respond to him the way that I've seen my peers? And so there was my opportunity to work for a Black general in the United States Army. And, at first, yeah, you had that comfort level. You're like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we have shared some hardships and
Right, right.
that the other. And, I don't even know why, but it dawned on me and I said, wow, if this guy were a white guy, would I, have this level of comfort? And it was almost like a disrespect because you kind of felt like, we have this in common, but, still, it's a hierarchical organization. I mean, he was a general officer. I was a major,
Yeah, don't take it for granted.
Yes, yes. And so I really, really had to, get my mind back right and remember where I was because I know that you're always being watched, right? And even though he was a general officer, he was still being watched.
Right.
And, I would not have wanted people to think, that I was being treated better than, or, that I thought that I could slack off because unfortunately, I actually replaced an individual to be able to get that job because that's what he had done. He had gotten overly comfortable. It was like, oh yeah, we're fraternity brothers kind of thing. And, all of these things that he felt that they had in common was supposed to be enough for him to not give his best every day.
Ooh.
And
Sometimes we do it to ourselves.
yes, yes. And I said, I am not going to be that person. I'm not going to be one of those people to take advantage of that because to me, that's what that was. And so I've been very mindful and, and I try to get my mentees to recognize that as well. It's like, hey, recognize I'm definitely going to give you some leeway because I'm going to give you some answers to the test, but that doesn't then afford you the opportunity to lose your decorum, to lose your military bearing, to now think, that we're friends, that you can take certain liberties because I have now afforded you, this relationship here. So I've never taken that for granted. And, it just bothers me when I see people do it. And, I want to snatch them up, bring them to the side and say, what?
Right. This is a privilege.
Correct. And so, don't abuse it because then it makes it harder for the people coming after you to be able to fully enjoy, right, and leverage that relationship. So and to this day, we still stay in touch. I still let him know where I'm going. And he was amazing because, one of the things that he told me that I have never forgotten and, was there was an assignment that I was up for and I didn't want it. I did not want to do it. And he says to me, and this is after, my time working for him. So now he was at another location and, I was as well. And I called him up to tell him, here's the job they're trying to send me to next. He said, I don't want to go there. There's nothing there for someone like me. It's like, listen, it's not about you. It is no longer about you. You have now reached a point in your career where you cannot think that the work that you are doing is about you. You've got to think about those coming after you, those who are going to work for you, those who are going to work with you.
That was wisdom.
Because you're leaving, an impression. You're gonna leave an impression where people are going to say either, wow, that was totally not what I was expecting, because we have all these prejudices, right? We fill in the blanks when we don't know something or have familiarity and oftentimes, as we don't fill it with positive things. We go to the negative. And so, his thing was, you have all this experience, you have so much to give, you need to be at that place, because we talk about how it's hard to be something you can't see. Yeah. And his thing was, you're going somewhere where these people have never seen anyone like you. And it was the truth. It was a hard truth because you're going, man, When you start hearing that phrase about being lonely at the top,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what that was, because you're thinking, I really am the only one, and so having, an ear to listen to you, or to lean on, that wasn't really there. And his point though was, and that's okay, because there are others who are looking to you. That's really what your purpose is to go there and show them how it's done, and show
Wow.
them that someday they can be you, or be as good as you, and do the things that you're doing and other things, because they've now had an opportunity to see you in a place like that. So, so pretty much since then, I've kind of left behind the whole, well, I'm doing this job for me.
Right. Yeah, I don't like that place. That's not a fun assignment. But I tell you, sis, like you have taken it, first of all, thank you so much for your service. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because, you pick up and move when the army tells you to. And, I mean, your service is exactly what it's supposed to be, selfless. Like we talked about, we met, 10 plus years ago. Afterwards, I was like, deuces, army. I've had enough. And you kept going. You know what I mean? And that's phenomenal. It speaks to, your perseverance and your care, because all along the way, you still have these, mentees or, other officers that are looking to you for guidance to clear that path, because there's not very many. There's not very many of us out there. So I
No.
applaud you, sis. If we've never talked about it personally, I applaud you for staying the course.
Well, thank you. I mean, the fact that you stayed as long as you did, right? I mean, at all, right? When we talk about how, half of 1% of half a percent, or what have you, having ever served. And,
Right.
I mean, that was no easy feat of your own,
Mm-mm.
And
And
I
like
mean, the path that you took,
right.
especially.
Right. And
So,
like you talk about, your mentor, typically being someone that, didn't look like you. So can you imagine, during the time when once I divorced, being a single mom? That was
correct.
such a huge challenge, because, even though, white men mentored me, that was not something they could typically understand. They would,
Correct.
have these meetings after hours. I'm like, hey, you got your wife at home to cook and run your kids
Correct.
around. I got to go do that. I got to go be mom. So that's when I knew it was my time to get off. So, it's
Mm.
just, I look forward to the day when, the military is a more, and I think it's evolving, it has evolved, a more, friendlier towards, single moms and dads. I'll put it
Sure.
like that. You know,
Sure. I
that
agree.
was my challenge. But you mentioned something about relationships earlier. What are some of the common traits or practices among successful mentorship relationships that you've observed?
Wow. Okay. I would say expectation management first
Mm-hmm.
and foremost. As the mentor, you generally
Mm-hmm.
have to set the pace for the mentees.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when you both have agreed, there's a willingness there, right? So voluntary, right? I mean, you want the relationship to be voluntary, not
Mm-hmm.
forced.
Right.
Or, where, okay, senior, here's a couple of juniors that you're going to mentor. Yeah. Really? So if the mentee is a little unwilling, I think that's okay, because they're young and they generally don't know any better. And so they oftentimes can't recognize the possibilities of the relationship. But the mentor, I mean, they're a mentor. And so they've had time, they've had experience, and you want that person to volunteer to want to be in that position, because otherwise it'll make for a very bad experience. So, like I said, the thing I would say is that the mentor, especially, is a volunteer,
Mm-hmm.
and that they set expectation management, because you mentioned earlier, that sometimes, that relationship can turn into something else, but you need to set the standard up front, you know, um, that here's what you can expect of me, and here's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to expect of you. And then probably lastly is, it needs to be regularly occurring.
I like that.
That, you can't just be off in the world and, now you've forgotten about the person. You want to be able to have, whether it's monthly or quarterly, but you want to have, some definitive period, set, because now that individual, the mentee, he or she can, they can build up their questions, and, they can see what's happening, and now they've got some stuff,
Mhm.
they want to share with their mentor when they have that opportunity to get back together. And now you've got the mentor who knows that there's going to be a set aside time, it's not a drive by, you're not feeling as if you're taking up this person's time, because they've got other things going. So by having that regular occurring time period set, I think also, contributes to the most successful mentor-mentee relationships.
So Trina, in addition to, the dedicated time, what are your thoughts on, the power dynamic that comes into play, with the mentor-mentee relationship? How do you I guess how do you neutralize that? For example, a mentee may think, oh, Colonel Rice is my mentor. I got to do whatever she says because she obviously knows what she's talking about. She a colonel. So, my objectives or goals just go out the window. I got to do whatever she tells me. How do you approach that?
And so I'll go back, to my first step there, or first, you know, um, expectation management. You've got to set that with the mentee and help them to understand, hey, this is voluntary. I'm here to try and help you, be the best version of yourself, or at least contribute to that. And whether it be personally or professionally, right? So
Mhm.
again, you want to establish that, because that individual, the mentee, needs to understand, again, what the role is that the mentor is going to play in their career, their life, that time period. So I think that's one of those things that does that. Another thing I would offer is asking, you as the mentee, you know, here's where I think I can use your help. Um, and the mentor should set that, right? Kind of set the agenda, if you will. It's like, at the end of the relationship, if it's a program, especially where there
Mhm.
is an end time, you want to set out, here are some outcomes, or, here are some goals we want to achieve. And so, that helps with that, because now you have a focus, right? The mentee knows that these are the things that we're supposed to be getting out of this. So we can stay focused on, when we get together, what's supposed to happen. The thing that I would offer that the mentors need to ensure is, what are they trying to get out of this mentee? I mean, are you trying to create a miniature version of yourself? Or, yeah, I mean, because there are people out there that is what they are looking to create, somebody in their own image. And, I, I have had to turn down mentor, relationships, because that's what I saw happening. And yeah, and it did not work. It was not working, because this individual was, really trying to mold me into a version of themselves. And so, that is one of the things that I tell individuals in general, whether I'm their mentor or not. It's something that I share with them is, hey, look, when you guys are out there looking for mentors, or you come across someone who wants to be your mentor, if that's a person you want to be like, then go for what you know. If trying to be a miniature version of them is what you want to do, then that's what you need to share with them, that is your goal. But I strongly recommend that not be your goal.
Mhm.
Your goal is to be the best version of you, right? I mean, we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and things that we want to do. And as a mentor, you have a lot of power, as you stated earlier, and so to use that to make them into your image is, I think is a very dangerous thing. So that is definitely one of the things when talking about expectation management. When I find a mentee, especially, if it's not part of a program, but, I come across a young soldier or officer, enlisted soldier, or, even civilian, that's one of the things I let them know. Listen, first and foremost, I am not trying to make you a miniature version of me. because I am not perfect. There's enough of me in the world with me. So, I want you to be you. And I want you to tell me, to be a part of that process on what does that look like. So, it's one of the reasons why I have, gotten my certification in executive coaching and why I'm working towards my, ACC certification.
Talk on it. Speak on it, sis. Because
Because
I wanted you to explore that and how you feel is relevant to, military experience.
yes, I mean, and I have found that, coaching is something that is very different from
Yes.
mentoring, but so very connected, especially when you have more experienced, I think, mentees
Mm-hmm.
who've been around for a little while, but are still trying to figure out, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? So, I'll give you an example of where of areas that I coach on a lot, or at least more so, as I've gotten older, is assignments. Right. So, I mentioned earlier before to you about how, the Army wanted to send me somewhere I wasn't necessarily interested in going. And and my, mentor told me it wasn't about me. Right. So, so I've taken a different approach with my mentees, especially because they're younger still. They hadn't gotten to their point in the career. I was when my mentor told me about it ain't about you. But what I do with them is coach on what are you trying to get out of the assignment?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes you may end up going somewhere that you would have never thought was on your radar because you never thought about what it is you're trying to get out of your next assignment. Where are you trying to grow? What areas are you trying to improve? What skills are you trying to gain? And how do you think that assignment may do that for you? Because sometimes we just want to go to a location. Oh,
Oh
because
yeah, it's close to
beautiful
mama and
in
them.
Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, it's beautiful in Fort Lauderdale. My parents are in, Colorado
I could
Springs.
be home for the holidays. Yeah, quickly.
Yes. Yes. And so, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, there are going to be people who think that way. And that's okay to a point, because at some point you're going to have to look at those places as, oh, well, I'll have to get there on vacation,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily on my assignment.
So
So,
Trina, you mentioned kind of, coaching your mentees on, understanding why they want a particular assignment, if it contributes to career growth or not. How do you, as a mentor, ensure that there's psychological safety for your mentees to express those concerns to you without them feeling like I can't share my opinion because she's gonna think it's stupid? You know what I mean? How
I
do you do that?
I do. So one of the things is demonstrating empathy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something that I find is extraordinarily lacking. And oftentimes, you'll find that not just in the military, but in organizations in general, that senior leaders do not share their failures.
Yes, 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 yes.
They are unwilling, to share that I didn't get here on a straight path. There were some zigzags, a couple of U-turns, some steps back. And then, I eventually made it here. And so that's what I do with my mentees. I mean, you don't get crazy about what it is that you are sharing. You don't have to necessarily share all the details. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
You don't got to share all the skeletons in your closet.
Right.
But you can show them the hand. It's like, listen,
He in there.
yes. And so, that's what I try and do. I share with them, that I had some setbacks, and some of those were my own fault, right? My own hubris, as well as there were individuals that were not interested in my best interest. And
Mm-hmm.
they worked, to try and harm me, maybe not necessarily physically, but professionally. And so I share those, you know, and when they come across situations that they're in that they don't know how to handle, or, it's starting to weigh on them, and they think they may do something crazy, or they want to do something and they don't realize it's crazy, I'll share with them, hey, so let me give you some options here, and you tell me which of these sound best, like something you could do
Mm-hmm.
without compromising yourself, your values, that, that's not unethical, that isn't about vengeance, So I've shared my stories of, how I've been treated and how I overcame those issues and concerns. And, you share with them sometimes, hey, I went to bed at night crying over that because, I didn't have anybody to share that with. I didn't know how to get through that without, having someone that I could lean on, that I could bounce these ideas off of. So for me, that's how I do that. It's being empathetic. It's sharing with them, some of those hardships that I endured and then how I overcame them,
I like that, sis. I like that you mentioned that because, I came across this acronym or this model for mentorship, and it's just simply called take good care. So the word take, good, and care. So
Mhm.
take, the T being trust, accountability, kinship, emancipating, allowing the mentees to construct and deconstruct their own objectives and explore their possible selves. Goodness, I forgot where I was going with. Oh, accountability. Um,
Yeah.
so look, I messed around and messed up my own little notes, but good being grace, objectives, openness, deconstruct, care standing for courage, affirm, reflect, engage. I thought that was pretty good. And I'm glad that you shared that part about empathy, sharing that with your mentees and then being open because not everybody is vulnerable. And that's a key part, in addition to trust, sharing your vulnerability is a key part to that mentee relationship. I want to ask you this one last question, sis, because I know we can talk about this for a couple minutes before we wrap up. But how does the presence of DEI within an organization help mentorship and leadership development?
Ooh, that
Right.
is a great question. And I really appreciate that, especially, just so recently, the shift that organizations are making around that. So I mentioned earlier about affirmative action, growing up in that era, and then where we are, 25 years, if you will, I guess, down the road from that, 30 years almost, and seeing how it reshaped, even if you will, in the last, 5 years, 6 years. And now already we're starting to backslide, if you will, from all of the
Mm.
commitments that, many of these CEOs and big companies and Congress and, just all these different, bodies, felt about that and how they were going to improve and do this, that, and the other. They were hiring teams of people and training and, money to be able to support these programs and bringing on these individuals and, having space for their employees to be able to bring their full selves or more of themselves to work. And
Hmm.
I will tell you, without inclusion, to me, I think having those other things are just nice to haves. If you talk about diversity, oh, hey, we have a diversity plan, that's great. But if those people aren't included when they arrive, that was just a plan on paper. And we see this constantly. We hear it in many different sectors, right? I always think about tech, in recent years where you hear these companies that talk about, oh, there aren't enough women, or, so you hear these tech companies talk about how there just aren't enough, there's enough diversity. There aren't enough, there isn't enough. And, I, I, I call, I call them on that because the problem isn't that there aren't enough of them out there, because there are. But the problem is when you bring them into your organizations, they don't feel a part of the organizations. They don't feel
Hmm.
included, right? Their voices are not heard or allowed to speak, as you talked earlier about safety.
Hmm.
Psychological safety is a real thing. So, if you don't have that, those programs fall apart anyway, in my opinion. And so to me, that was always one of the things in some of the organizations that I was a part of as I was coming up in the military. As I mentioned to you earlier, they go to the golf course, or, they want to go fishing. Like you mentioned earlier about being a single parent. They want to do things after work, after hours. So, those are exclusive activities. So sure, you may have more women or single parents. You can have all of these diverse groups in your organization. But if you're going to do things that make them feel excluded, again, it's just going to fall apart and they ring hollow. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. And I probably should have led with that because I know we could have taken that so many different places. But sis, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for your continued service to our nation. I personally, truly appreciate your sacrifice. Your insights into mentorship and leadership have been incredibly invaluable. And I know our listeners have gained a lot from your experiences and your wisdom. Your dedication to ethical leadership and your commitment to developing future leaders is truly inspiring. We appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge with us and look forward to hopefully having you back in the future to continue this dialogue and to explore new developments in the field of leadership, especially with coaching. We got to talk more about that.
Yeah.
Yes. And so we wish you continued success in all your endeavors within the United States Army and beyond, because we know there's always a beyond.
Yeah.
And thank you for being a part of leading by example, upholding standards without compromise. So in closing, audience, thank you for tuning into today's episode, Mentorship and its Impact on Leadership Development. We've had an enlightening discussion, and we're grateful to Colonel Trina Rice for sharing her invaluable insights and experiences. As we've heard, mentorship plays a crucial role in shaping leaders who embody honor and responsibility. By investing in mentorship programs and fostering meaningful mentor-mentee relationships, we can cultivate the next generation of leaders who are equipped to lead with integrity and excellence. So before we close, I always got to just thank my producer, Ms. Moxie Rogers, for keeping us sharp and on target. Please tune in for the next episode on Thursday, August 15th, 2024 at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where the topic is the ethics of whistleblowing. This is Dr. Vaughn, hoping you stay inspired and continue to lead with honor. Goodbye.
Well, thank you.
You have been listening to Leading by Example, Upholding Standards Without Compromise. I am your host, Dr. Vaughn, bringing you inspiring excellence, one lesson at a time. Tune in to Transformation Talk Radio every first and third Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific for fun, practical, and educational stories as I share lessons, both the good and the bad, that I have learned in my 20 years of leadership and management experience. As we go through and learn these lessons, I would ask you to be thinking about those lessons that you bring that you could share for potential, hey, you may even want to be a guest on our show. So think about those lessons as we continue to explore inspiring excellence one lesson at a time. For more information, please visit www.enterosolutions.com. That's ENTERO.